The rain didn't fall as much as it drifted sideways, whispering against the tall windows of the church as if it had something to confess. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of roses, polished wood, and a heavy kind of grief that lingered even among strangers trying not to cry. Margot Caldwell sat quietly in the back pew, her coat soaked despite the unopened umbrella by her side. She hadn't spoken to anyone since she arrived, not even to her mother. When Evelyn said softly, "I didn't think you'd come," Margot didn't flinch, just turned slightly, noticing her mother nervously adjusting the jeweled brooch on her blazer as if avoiding the silence between them. "I wasn't planning to," Margot replied, her voice as muted as the organ music playing in the background, "but I owed her that much." Her mother's reply, "Well, it was good of you," for appearances, hit the familiar note Margot had come to expect. That word, appearances, which in her family meant far more than honesty, affection, or truth. The service had already begun, but Margot felt as though she knew exactly how it would go. A generalized eulogy from a pastor who hadn't really known Celia. Quiet exchanges of looks between carefully dressed mourners, wondering not if, but how much they stood to gain. Celia Caldwell, her grandmother, had been many things: a matriarch, a philanthropist, a powerful businesswoman. But to Margot, she had been something else entirely, the one person who had truly seen her. Even in death, her presence filled the cathedral like incense, subtle, expensive, and unforgettable. But Margot herself had long since been forgotten, or perhaps intentionally left behind. After the service, the reception hall was a blur of lukewarm tea, champagne flutes, and polite tension. Margot tugged at her damp sleeves, her fingers prickling with the memory of cold metal railings on her grandmother's garden balcony, where she used to stand just to feel anything real. Most of the people gathered had only known the empire Celia built, not the woman who wrote quietly in midnight journals, who gardened with bare hands just to connect with the earth, who whispered of regrets when no one was listening. Then came a moment, a quiet interruption. A man with storm-gray eyes approached her and spoke gently. "Miss Caldwell?" He introduced himself as Adrian Vale, Celia's attorney, though not the one Margot remembered. When she expressed confusion, he told her of recent changes Celia had made before her passing. "There was a private reading of the will. She asked for your presence," he said, placing a black envelope in her hand. And with that, the inevitable began. 3 days later, Margot walked into Caldwell House, a place built on legacy, pride, and decades of secrets. The family was already seated in the grand salon, their glances sharp, their silence sharper. She took her place quietly and listened as Adrian began. The last will and testament of Celia Marin Caldwell. One by one, names fell from his lips. Her father, her aunt, her cousin, all receiving small portions, forgiven debts, or symbolic gifts. But then came her name, and the room went still. "To my granddaughter, Margot Elise Caldwell, I leave the entirety of my estate. Everything, property, assets, trust funds, even the contents of the locked room in the West Wing." A gasp rippled through the family. "You lie!" Veronica had whispered, refusing to believe it. But Adrian had no doubt. It was real. And then there was more. Celia had left a letter, a private one, meant only for Margot, and to be opened after sunset. Whatever it contained, Margot knew it was never just about the inheritance. It was a reckoning, and it had only just begun. Margot stood before the towering door at the end of the West Wing, an old brass key trembling in her hand. Moonlight spilled across the long corridor, illuminating the dust-covered floorboards and casting ghostly reflections on centuries of framed Caldwell family portraits, war heroes, tycoons, and elegant women with secrets stitched into their gowns. This part of the house hadn't been touched in years, and the silence, broken only by the pounding of her heart, felt ancient. It was after sunset. Everyone else had gone. If the funeral was a formality and the will reading a battleground, then this, whatever lay behind this locked door, felt like the moment the war truly began. With a breath and a turn, the key clicked into place, and the heavy door creaked open. The smell of cedar, old books, and gardenias, her grandmother's favorite, washed over her. Unlike the rest of the poised elegance of Caldwell House, this room was different, intimate, sacred, a private archive lined with shelves of leather-bound books, papers tied with silk ribbon, glass cabinets filled with delicate artifacts, and a fireplace with the soft remains of ash. At its center sat a solitary black envelope, wax-sealed, placed with care atop an old Queen Anne table. Her name, Margot, written in Celia's graceful hand. She picked up the envelope, her fingers trembling, and opened the letter within. My dearest Margot, if you're reading this, I've slipped into the next great mystery. In the letter, Celia confesses the things she never said in life, that pride held her back, and that Margot, the so-called black sheep, was the only one who never pretended. The inheritance, Celia warned, wasn't a reward, it was a responsibility. The family was rotten beneath its polished surface, and the truth, uglier than any courtroom battle, lay hidden in the house, and it needed to be uncovered. Start with the journals, start with the mirror, and don't trust anyone who says they're protecting you. Even me. As the words sank in, Margot found herself staring at shelves, searching. Almost an hour passed before she unearthed 5 journals hidden in a drawer beneath a mirrored armoire. The first entry, dated April 3, 2001, hinted at a figure from the past, someone she thought she saw again, someone buried and forgotten. Things buried improperly always rise, Celia wrote. And as she flipped through each page, more fell into place. The guilt, the silence, and the repeated warnings about someone Margot resembled too closely. A tightness gripped her chest as memory surfaced. Shadows in hallways, arguments that ceased when she entered, murmurs dismissed as business or family drama. But this wasn't gossip. This felt darker. Then came a knock. Her body jumped, the journal toppling from her hands. Slowly, the door creaked open, and there, standing like a ghost pulled straight from her past, was Julian Price, her childhood protector, her closest friend. Gone for 7 years without a word, and now he stood in the secret room looking like he'd always belonged there. He said to me, "They told me she died, and I knew you'd open the West Wing." He explained, Celia had called him just days before her death, told him it was time, told him Margot would need him. When she asked why he left, his voice dropped. Because of what we found. He said, "That summer, under the greenhouse floor." A shiver ran down her spine. That long, hot summer, she had tried to forget it. The trap door beneath the greenhouse, the strange locked box, the strange photographs, the whispers behind walls. Her mother had dismissed it. Veronica had forbidden its mention. Celia had sent Julian away. And now it was back. As the wind howled outside and a journal page turned on its own, Margot realized something chilling. The real Caldwell secret wasn't written in the will, it was buried beneath the gardens. And whatever it hadn't stayed buried. The greenhouse was dying. Overgrown vines clawed at the broken glass, where moisture clung like breath on a mirror, though whatever warmth had once thrived inside was long gone. Margot stepped cautiously across shattered stone paths of the once pristine garden, the air thick with the scent of rot, wet soil, and a metallic kind beneath it. Memory. It had been years since she last stood here, 15 years old, rain drumming on the glass, when she and Julian had discovered the hidden corner of the greenhouse where the ground dipped and echoed hollowly, like secrets whispering from below.
They had unearthed a rusted metal hatch just before Celia caught them. She didn't shout, she never had to. Her tone calm, final. "This is not a place for you." Then, to Julian, a quiet command, "Pack your things. You're going home." He was gone the next morning. She hadn't seen him again until last night, until the locked library and the secrets hidden behind Celia's wax-sealed letter. Now Julian stood beside her once more, older in ways that went beyond the physical. The further they stepped into the ruined greenhouse, the more the rest of the world seemed to fall away, until all that remained was creaking vines, ticking glass, and their own breath in the cold. "It's colder than it should be," Margot muttered. Julian nodded, explaining the room's strange temperature. It had been altered with a subchamber, allegedly for orchids or heirloom seeds. Or, Margot thought darkly, for secrets. The tilted floor revealed itself easily. She knelt and brushed away the years of decay while Julian just watched, standing at the line where both their lives had once changed. Then he crouched beside her and whispered, "Do you remember the sound?" When she looked at him, puzzled, he pressed his palm to the soil. That night, it wasn't just hollow. Something was moving down there. That part she had forgotten, or chosen to. Together they cleared the earth. Beneath the grime was a corroded trapdoor stamped with the Caldwell family crest, an ornate C entangled by a snake and a blooming rose. Her fingers traced a small keyhole near the edge, and her breath caught. She reached into her coat and pulled out the tiny silver key that had been taped to the last page of Celia's letter. The only clue, a single letter. G. Greenhouse. The key clicked. With effort, the hatch lifted, groaning open to reveal a tight spiral staircase and a wave of breathless, unnatural cold. Julian shined his flashlight down into the darkness. "Guess she wanted to be buried with the truth," he said. Margot's voice was barely a whisper. Or maybe the truth buried her. The staircase narrowed as they descended. Stone, brick, older than the house itself, and colder. As the earthy smell of the greenhouse faded, metal and chemicals seeped in. The passageway at the bottom was lit only by dying wall sconces, powerless for years. Along one wall, rusted filing cabinets. Opposite, a wooden workbench stacked with yellowed maps. And ahead, one thick steel door slightly ajar. Margot stepped in and froze. This wasn't a vault for wealth. It was for evidence. Boxed and labeled with disturbing precision. Case files, medical trials, inquiries, and one simple box marked Margot E. Caldwell, confidential. Her hand shook as she reached for it, but Julian paused her. "You sure you want to start with that?" She narrowed her eyes. "My name is on it." "Exactly," he said. "That's why I'm worried." But she opened it. Inside, Polaroids, news clippings, a birth certificate, hers but wrong. Born in New York, not Boston. August 3rd, not July 31st. More papers, a sealed medical file dated 6 months after her supposed birth. One final envelope signed, "Adoption, not processed, sealed by Celia Caldwell." "What the hell is this?" she whispered. Julian looked at a photo from the box of a young woman, maybe 20, with dark hair and Margot's cheekbones. It wasn't Evelyn, Margot's mother, but the resemblance was undeniable. "Margot, this is your real mother," Julian said softly. Her knees weakened, her mouth opened, but the words wouldn't come. "No, my mother raised me, Julian interrupted gently. "This certificate was forged. Look. Sealed for reissue. Celia signed it. This wasn't a mistake. This was a cover-up." Margot's mind spun. This wasn't a lie of necessity. It was a lie of survival, of protection, or of manipulation. And then they heard it. The vault door creaked wider. Julian turned, flashlight raised. A hallway extended deeper. Cold, silent. At the end, another room. They walked in. What they found was worse than either had imagined. A metal chair bolted to the ground, restraints still intact. Behind it, a steel plaque on the wall. Caldwell Initiative, Subject 42, Behavioral Correction, 1983 to 1994. Julian stepped back in horror. What the hell were they doing down here? Margot didn't answer, because above the plaque, scrawled in red marker, were 5 chilling words. We were never just heirs. And in that instant, standing in a forgotten underground vault beneath the greenhouse where her childhood began, Margot Caldwell finally understood. Celia hadn't just hidden money. She had buried lives. And Margot's was never truly hers to begin with.
She said. But why? What were they trying to make me into? Julian hesitated, then said it. A perfect Caldwell. Smart, controlled, useful, not like the others who failed. He glanced up. Barker said the line was rotting. Who's Barker? Architect. Celia paid him off book to fix the East Wing. Then he disappeared. A week later, she called my father. Julian's timeline clicked. That's when she sent me away. Margot stood silent at the window as wind lashed against it. Somewhere the kettle screamed. She didn't move. I have to talk to my mother. Erased everything. She told me, you didn't cry. You didn't scream. Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. You watched, like it was an experiment. Margot trembled, heart pounding, bones buzzing. And then Evelyn said it. The name. The girl in the photograph. Your birth mother. Her name was Rose. And everything inside Margot fell silent. Because in every secret, and every Caldwell tale whispered behind doors, Rose was the name that was never spoken aloud. The girl who vanished. The girl who screamed. The girl who died in the greenhouse before Margot was ever born. A dull, persistent cascade drummed against the window panes of Celia's library, like impatient hands tapping on glass, while Margot stared at her reflection in the darkened mirror across from the fireplace, half expecting some other face to look back. She hadn't slept. She couldn't, not after what Evelyn had said. The name Rose echoed through her skull like an incantation never meant to be spoken aloud. Her mother, not Evelyn, someone erased, someone who was never supposed to exist. But that wasn't true, was it? The photo in the box, the forged birth certificate, the sealed vault beneath the greenhouse. Margot's throat tightened as she reached again for Celia's hidden journal, the one tucked beneath West Wing archives. She flipped to a page she hadn't dared read the night before. September 2nd, 1993. Classified entry, private. It read, Rose Caldwell was never documented formally. Ava's second daughter. Too sharp, too wild, too watchful, unfit for the legacy. The institute ran tests. The girl didn't pass. Or so they said. But the entry ended with a question that shattered Margot's denial. What if we didn't lose her? What if we put her in a new body? The journal slipped from Margot's hands as if it had burnt her. She couldn't stop shaking. Was that what she was? A mirror? A rebuilt life in the ashes of another? Was Margot Rose? Julian found her curled on the couch, silent, the color drained. You read it. I'm not who I thought I was, she whispered emptily. I'm a replacement. He didn't argue, but he didn't deny it either. Ever wonder why Celia always kept you close, but never made you the public face of the family? He asked. Because she was afraid someone would see you, recognize you. Margot's breath caught. There had been another name, Barker. Celia once told her at age 11 during one of her blueprint drawings in the yard, you have hands like Barker, always looking for fault lines. They both remembered.
They drove straight to the sealed East Wing, untouched since water damage decades ago. Who was Barker? Margot murmured. Julian's jaw tensed. Architect, vault designer, vanished without trace after 91. And deep in the corridor, they found his signature carved into a high molding. Behind a hollow panel, they discovered a hidden crawlspace. Inside, skeletal remains. Crumpled. Forgotten. A weathered satchel still clutched to the chest. The smell was unbearable. And inside the satchel, notes, labeled Observed Behavior, Caldwell Project, D47. Julian read the entries aloud. Multiple female children. Secret arrivals. Watched. Controlled. One escaped. D47. Gone for 13 days, returned with no memory. Margot whispered in disbelief, D47? Then Julian turned another page, revealing a marked floor plan. Caldwell House. The mirror room. Location. Beneath the east staircase. They didn't hesitate. Sheet-covered portraits and boxed furniture lined the stairwell, but beneath the dust was a door, invisible at first, its edges blurred with polish. Once seen, it couldn't be unseen. Behind it, stairs. Mossy. Damp. Descending into memory. They stepped down. 1, 2. Then they heard it, a lullaby. Soft. Faint. And chillingly familiar. Margot froze. Julian, do you hear that? She whispered. He nodded, face pale. It was her voice, singing. Down in the dark. The base of the stairs revealed the impossible, her childhood bedroom recreated perfectly beneath the estate, even the stuffed rabbit with the torn ear. Trembling, she picked it up. Inside the stitched seam, a key, and beneath the rabbit's paw, a single paper note. They told me my name was Rose, but the mirror never agreed. Margot stared at it as her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Julian, she choked, I don't think I was alone down here. Later that night, they sealed the crawl space again, returned the body, and left the East Wing untouched. Do we call the police? Julian finally asked. Margot looked out across the ruined estate, her voice cold. No. If we do, all this disappears, buried again under lawsuits and press statements. Julian nodded slowly. Then we keep digging, alone. Margot faced him. Something had changed in her eyes. Not fear, not confusion, but resolve. I have to find the others. If there are more like me. Julian's breath caught. You mean survivors? Margot's answer was steady. Yes, and I'm going to bring them back. 3 nights after discovering the mirror room, that's when Celia finally spoke. Not through journals or hidden letters this time, but through a flickering voice laced with static and memory, her final confession caught on an old cassette tape Julian found behind a loose floorboard in the North Library wall. It fell out when I moved that statue of St. Rita, he told Margot. I wasn't even looking. I think she meant for you to find it, now. The tape was labeled in a sharp, simple scrawl. For Margot, when the silence becomes too loud. Margot stared at it unmoving before slipping it into the old, dusty player Celia once used for opera. The click of the cassette locking into place echoed through the room, like a shell casing dropping in a war bunker. And then her voice emerged, clear, measured, vulnerable in a way Margot had never heard. You were never a replacement, she said. You were a redemption, an attempt to rewrite a terrible experiment into something that felt like choice. But even pure things rot when grown in toxic soil. A pause followed, a quiet sip, maybe tea, maybe habit. Then came the truth. A secret alliance hidden for generations. It started with the Council, Celia explained. A private group, Morgan, Fairmont, Caldwell, Bannister. Old names, old money, all of them terrified. Bloodlines were weakening, suicide, rebellion, infertility. They decided to fix it, create the future. It was called the Inheritance Project. 47 prototypes were made, biological legacies engineered from what they believed to be the best of themselves. Not all were viable. Some didn't survive their second year. Margot sat frozen. Celia continued. Your mother, Rose, was one of them. The only one to escape. Too emotional. Too aware. Too dangerous. She was 12 when she tried to burn down the South Wing. She sedated her, played pretend for the council, told them Rose was dead. But she wasn't. She was changed. There was a pause, and then the words that sliced through Margot like a blade. She became you. Not an adopted child, not a cousin, not even a different person. You are Rose. A fractured version, a memory scrubbed raw, created to be compliant, to be useful this time. Julian's hand reached for Margot's, a silent anchor. They listened on. Celia described how the family scattered the evidence, vaults beneath estates, labs built into old foundations, each hiding a piece of the story. They never shut it down, she warned. They just faded it into shadows. One last warning. Subject 12 was still alive. Her name was Lillian. You used to call her Rain. The tape ended in sharp static, followed by a bone-shivering whine that nearly shattered the deck. She ejected it just in time, watching a torn strip of tape dangle like a severed scream. Erased. Deliberately. She sat in silence, then murmured, I know what I need to do. Julian didn't ask.
She answered anyway. I need to find Rain. They began with Barker's smuggled files. Hidden in notes and diagrams was a partially redacted manifest from 1994, but one line was still legible. Drop site, Rain, Elk Ridge Program, Montana. Julian raised an eyebrow. Elk Ridge was shut down in 2003. Illegal hypnosis therapy? Margot snapped. And Rain was sent there? Julian kept searching, page after page, database after database, until finally, a red flag. Rain L. No last name. Former psychology student. Expelled from a Wyoming university. Labeled in early testing files as behavioral cognition anomaly. Subject discharged from memory inconsistencies and heightened mimicry. Someone had kept the pattern going. They found her in Idaho, deep in wilderness, in a cabin so isolated it didn't exist on any map. Hours of fake names, quiet bribes, and a kind local counselor led to her. Rain still sees clients, the woman said. She's odd, like a mirror. She never asks twice. She already knows. When Margot and Julian arrived, the trees leaned close, as if bearing witness to long-forgotten things. The door swung open before Margot could knock. A woman stood there, mid-30s, pale skin, eyes like glass before the storm hits, and stillness, like she didn't breathe, just waited. You're Margot, she said. Margot froze. You remember me? Rain stepped aside. No, she replied, but that doesn't make you any less real. Inside the dim cabin, the air was thick with time. The walls were covered in sketches, all of Margot's face, as a child, a teen, now. She used to hum this to me, Margot said aloud, as a broken music box played in the corner. Rain nodded. She hummed it to all of us. Margot finally asked, How many are left? Rain closed her eyes. Some died, some vanished, some forgot on purpose. And what about you? Margot asked. Did you choose to remember? Rain was quiet. I didn't have a choice. Some of us were marked, memories that wouldn't wash away. She placed her hand gently over Margot's and said, They'll come for you now. Who will? Margot asked. The ones who need the story erased, the council, the institute, even your own family. Margot's voice is ice. Then I'll burn it all down. For the first time, Rain smiled. Good, she said quietly, because they already burned us once. The Idaho forest breathed like a sleeping beast.
Outside Rain's cabin, the trees moaned in the wind, and the cold slipped through the window seams like whispers with teeth, curling into the room with intention. Margot stood at the glass, palm resting softly against it, staring over the endless dark sea of pines where the night stretched between today and tomorrow, a moment suspended in realization. She had found Rain, found herself, and crossed too many lines to ever go back. Julian sat beside her on the adjacent couch, sifting silently through recovered files from the Elk Ridge facility, pulled from administrator tablets Rain had hidden away. His eyes narrowed in that particular way that said, "Something's wrong. Just need the proof." The air inside carried the burn of herbs, sage, cedar, hissing quietly in a cracked ceramic bowl on the stove, while Rain moved like a shadow through the kitchen. Her walls were plastered with documents, photocopies, medical annotations, hand-drawn diagrams, and unsettling scrawls of children. Shaky cursive from trembling hands, haunting words from lives lived underneath silence. The watchers come at night. Mirror Girl sings when the others sleep. Subject 19 disappeared after the scream. Dr. Mado said we were born of legacy, but bled like animals. Margot's throat tightened as her eyes scanned every line, trying to inhale them like armor. How were there so many and no one spoke? Her voice cracked. No lawsuits? No leak? Rain didn't answer right away, just stared into the flame with a dead calm. The Institute owned everything, including silence. That's when Julian made a sound, a quiet laugh laced with dread. I found something. He turned the tablet and showed them a cached map, blinking red nodes, 10 locations, one central, Caldwell House, others scattered across the nation, each labeled Razor, all dated within the last 2 decades. Looks like they never stopped, he said. But what's Razor? Margot asked. His brow furrowed. A code name. Maybe it's a new phase, or maybe they've restarted the project. Rain walked up, brushed her arm gently against Margot's, and pointed to the map's oldest tag. No, she whispered. Look, that one's been running since 2003. Julian was stunned. But that's Elk Ridge. It was shut down. Rain gave him a look that spoke volumes. They never shut down. They go dark, just like we did. And then it began, a sound outside the cabin, a snap. Not trees, not snow, a boot on a branch. Then another. Margot's gaze snapped to the window, to the shotgun mounted just beneath the sill. Rain was already moving. In one slide, she had it in her arms, safety off. Who else knows we're here? Julian whispered sharply. No one uninvited. And that's the problem. Flashlights flickered among the trees. No voices. Professionals. Silent. Coordinated. Margot ducked, her chest tightened with terror. They found us! Rain flung back the rug, revealing a hidden panel in the cabin floor. Go. Now. Tunnel runs beneath the ridge. Margot hesitated. I'm not leaving you. You're not, she snapped. You're taking this. A folder stuffed in Margot's hand. Coordinates, codes, names, the rest of the project, survivors, people the council either wants dead or harvested. Choices end now. Another snap. Closer. Julian dropped into the tunnel first, reached back for Margot, who clutched the folder against her chest as if to stop her heart from breaking. Rain followed and sealed the hatch. Darkness fell, broken only by emergency red lights flickering along the crawlspace floor. Go, Rain ordered. They'll stall for me. Rain, Margot gasped, but Rain drew close, forehead to forehead, and whispered, I remember you. Margot froze. You remember me? Rain pushed them forward. Behind them came the sound. Not a footstep, not a knock, a blast. A detonation that ripped through the woods like a rage finally unchained. They didn't look back. Not when the cabin went up in flame. Not when smoke chased them through the dirt. Not when gunfire cracked like lightning, ripping the night apart. And when they emerged, wet, shivering, scraped, But alive, Rain was gone. Julian made the call, the last number he trusted. Alexander Morris. Back in Caldwell, the old man's voice crackled through the burner speaker, grief-worn and weary. "I warned her," he said. "Told Celia what would happen, that once the trial data was breached, once Margot touched the vault, fail-safes would activate." "Fail-safes?" Julian asked. "The council. They monitor everything," Alexander replied. "Your presence triggered protocols older than their leadership." "Then why wait?" Margot asked. "Why haven't they moved on me yet?" A pause. Then softly, "Because they're waiting for confirmation of a return." "Return to what?" Silence, then broken by a truth that chilled deeper than any winter night. Razor isn't just a kill command, Margot. It's about memory restoration, behavioral bootstraps, profile restarts. It's not you they're after, Margot. It's her, the one burned into you, watching through your eyes again. His final warning came quiet. "You don't know what you're carrying." Then the call died. Hours later, they found the river camping under an old ranger station Rain had once used for supplies. Margot stared into the fire, finger tracing the folder edge. Inside were 7 names, 7 codes, 7 cities, marked EXPR, Experimental Survivor. Julian crouched nearby. "We need a plan. Fast, quiet, off-grid. No buses, no airports. They'll be watching." Margot nodded, but her voice was somewhere far off. "What if I wake her?" Julian looked at her, steady. "If Alexander's right, what if she's not all gone?" Julian didn't blink. "Then we deal with her together." Margot turned to him, tears rimmed her eyes. "She'll be angry." His fingers curled around hers, firm, anchored. "She should be."
The landscape stretched wide and flat, the air thick with late autumn wind, brushing through tall grass and over crumbling roads like a ghost retracing its steps. Margot had never been to this part of the Midwest, at least not that she remembered, but something in the brittle stillness of the small, near-forgotten town made her feel like she'd walked its cracked sidewalks before, as if dreams had laid breadcrumbs here long ago. She and Julian drove in silence through the sleeping streets, past boarded-up shops and a peeling theater marquee that read, "The past never sleeps." Julian's voice broke the quiet, dry and sharp. "Is that supposed to be inspirational or a threat?" Margot didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the name written on the 3rd file Rain had handed her before going up in flames. Lena M., Subject 31, Haven Hill Children's Home. Nonverbal mimic. Artificial empathy threshold exceeded. Celia's handwritten note beside the page whispered doubt into the silence. Failed or faked? Haven Hill had been closed since 2005, thanks to budget concerns and structural decay, but the truth felt older and far more deliberate. They arrived just after noon, the clouds heavy with stormlight. The children's home loomed before them, a wound made of brick and ivy, its eyes shattered and unblinking, its swing set creaking over weeds like broken lullabies. "I hate places that look like they're still breathing," Julian muttered. Margot said nothing, her eyes on the faded sign chained above the doors. "Welcome to Haven, where every heart heals." A lie carved in steel, a prayer no child ever answered. They slipped inside through a loosened panel on the west wall, inhaling cold, wet air choked with mold and time. The 1st floor was rot, but the second still remembered. Bunk beds rusted into floorboards, art drawings like echoes of forgotten light, tiny shoes beneath rusted lockers. In the back of the west corridor, they found a small office, drowning in file folders, chewed by time and rats. Julian dug through the wreckage. "There," he whispered. The photo was water-stained, but the face was still visible.
A girl with dark curls and a hollow stare. Lena Morrigan. Subject 31. Adopted at 6. Returned at 9. Nonverbal. Record terminated March 19th, 2004. Terminated record? Margot asked. Julian looked up. Terminated record means deleted. On paper, she vanished. And yet, someone kept the file. Margot noticed dust disturbed beneath the desk, a square patch of clean floor, wood warped and cracked. She dug in with careful fingers, and the floor groaned. A trap door. How many underground vaults does one continent need? She whispered. Julian only offered a glance. Let's find out. They descended into a tight corridor that stank of bleach and rust. Emergency lights flickered like failing memories. Doors lined the hall, red numbers peeling on old paint. 14, 15, 16, 17, room 18. The door hung ajar. Inside, a sterile cell, a tile floor, a rusted cot, a child's mobile spinning above nothing, and in the corner, frozen like a puppet waiting for cue, was Lena. Not a girl anymore, but a woman, still as a whisper, early 30s at most, arms wrapped around her knees, humming not a melody, but simply some sound. Her curls framed her face like a forgotten portrait. Her eyes were empty, but watching. Margot stepped forward. Lena? The woman didn't move, didn't speak, but a smile, small, soft, and knowing, lifted the corner of her mouth. Recognition. It took nearly an hour before she moved. Communication was a dance of silence. No voice, no words. Margot tried kindness, tried questions. Lena responded only with mimicked emotion, her expression reflecting whatever Margot projected. Nervous? Lena cowered. Hopeful? Lena beamed, like a mirror tuned to empathy. Julian whispered, she said she didn't just mimic, she absorbed, reacted to emotion rather than meaning, like a human echo. Margot nodded, slowly seeing it. But when the question came, do you remember the mirror room? Everything in Lena froze. Her gaze slid away, her pupils widened, and she looked not at Margot, but at Julian. Then she shivered, rocked back and forth, not from fear, but from recognition of him. She tilted her head, crawled slowly across the cold floor toward the far wall, fingers feeling along the tile, finding a seam with unerring precision. A panel popped free. Inside, photos. Stacks of them. Margot's face at every age, but also Julian. Several images of him as a child, of him at Keldwell House. One, framed in dust, captured him at 12, standing by the old barn, the day before he was sent away. Its back had just one word. Child scrawled, liar. Margot turned to Julian, her throat tightening. His face had gone pale. Lena stood now, arms limp, eyes staring through him, rage and terror blending beneath her still surface. Julian, Margot whispered, what is this? Julian said nothing, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Lena stepped forward. Margot reached for her gently. You know him? Lena nodded, and then touched a trembling hand to her throat, slowly dragged it across, a gesture like a knife. Margot staggered. What are you saying? Darkness swallowed the room as Lena turned the lights off, and in complete silence, she mouthed the words. He wasn't just there. He helped them. He chose them first. The ride from Haven Hill was silent. Outside, rain battered the windshield like it was trying to get in, and lightning webbed across the blackened sky like shattered glass. Inside the car, Margot sat stiff behind the wheel, fingers locked at 10 and 2, her jaw set like iron, her knuckles pale under the weight of everything she now knew. Julian sat beside her in the passenger seat, eyes watching the road ahead, but his mind wasn't there. It was elsewhere, distant, buried under guilt. He hadn't said a word, not when Lena revealed the truth, not when Margot confronted him with the photo, the one marked liar, and not during the tense 40 minutes it took to gently ease Lena out of that underground cell. Lena hadn't spoken either. She now sat humming in the back seat, a soft, empty sound, like remembering a song she was never taught. But Margot didn't need words anymore. She'd seen the recognition in Lena's eyes. The terror, yes, but also something more. She had not seen a stranger. She had seen someone complicit. Not just a witness, a collaborator. Margot's pulse snapped, and she turned off onto a tree-lined road. Gravel crunched beneath the tires as she parked. The silence screamed. She turned her head slowly. "Tell me the truth." Julian said nothing, so she slammed her hand against the dash. "Don't make me ask again." His voice came quiet, broken. "When I left the estate, it wasn't because Celia sent me away. I asked to go." Margot blinked. She didn't... What? She tried to keep me, but I made the choice. The words split open something raw and ruthless in her chest. "Why would you choose to leave me?" she demanded, her voice cracking. And finally, Julian looked at her. "I followed you that summer, when you stopped sleeping, when the arguing started, when you visited the garden at night." He swallowed. "I saw you dig up that photograph." Margot's heart stopped. The photo, the one buried under the white rose bush, the one she swore never existed, the one she used to whisper to. "I took it," Julian said. "I was told to." Silence dropped like a guillotine. "Told to?" she said slowly. "By who?" He reached into his bag, hands trembling, and pulled out an envelope. Old paper, familiar script, her name, Celia's handwriting. He held it out. "I was 13, he said. "They made me choose, you or my family. I chose wrong." Margot opened the letter slowly. "Margot, if he gives you this, it means something has gone wrong. There are two truths you must learn. One, not everyone who protects you does it for your sake. And two, betrayal wears familiar skin." Julian knew.
He always knew. He was placed near you, not by me, but by them. He was sent to monitor Subject 47's instability, but he fell for the one thing he wasn't supposed to, you. And now they'll hunt him as they hunt you. Tears blurred her vision as something she hadn't wanted to admit twisted into something worse than rage, betrayal that had once looked like love. "I should throw you out of this car," she whispered. Julian nodded. "I know." "Let the council clean you up, clean this mess." "I know." Her hands returned hard to the wheel. Behind them, Lena shifted, breathed. Not quite words, but Margot drowned them out and drove. Hours later, in a motel outside Albina, Kansas, the shower scalded Margot's back as she stood under it for nearly an hour, scraping betrayal from her skin like layers of something that had lived there too long. Outside, Julian dozed upright in a chair, the motel Bible untouched on the side table. The distance between them was deliberate. Lena faced the wall on the second bed, silent, brittle, unmoving. But around 2 a.m., under the broken moonlight spilling through the window, Margot noticed her pacing, silent, barefoot. She was drawing, over and over on the motel notepad, the same symbol. Sharp, branching lines, inverted triangles, and circles like roots. It looked alive. "That's the project's sigil," Julian said hoarsely. "The original one, from the ceiling, in the mirror room. It means origin fragment." Margot's voice trembled. "She remembers more than she lets on." A beat passed. "Rain said the mirror never agreed." "Fracture," Margot whispered.
She closed her eyes, repeating the notes. Subject projects empathy, mirrors dissociation, may fracture identity structure. She wasn't wiped, Margot said slowly. She wasn't erased, she was planted. Rose wasn't removed, she was buried. And all of this, Rain's fire, Lena's awakening, it's unearthing her. Julian stared. Planted? Yes, she whispered. Celia planted Rose inside me. Then, a knock. Slow, loud, measured. Margot froze. So did Julian. Lena turned toward the door, not afraid, expecting. Don't answer that, Julian whispered. Another knock. This time, 3. Too casual, too quiet. Margot moved to the door, looked through the peephole. Nothing, just a void. Then an eye, glowing red, a lens, a camera, and a voice followed. Dry, old, female. It's time to come home, Rose. Margot didn't open the door. She ripped it off its hinges. The burst of adrenaline slammed through her like a war drum. After everything, the betrayals, the silence, the buried truth, it was enough to shatter reasoning, to let raw survival act first. But when she tore it open, there was no one. The hallway stood empty. No old woman, no shadow, only the fate-charged scent of burnt ozone, like something had stood there and vanished. At her feet, a small, sleek black device, no bigger than a pager. She bent, picked it up. A scarlet light blinked once, twice, and mid-air a projection ignited. Her grandmother's face. Not the Celia Margot remembered, affectionate, flawed, and human, but someone else. This version wore a navy suit, her hair pinned in a chignon, features hard and soulless. Behind her stood a blurred wall of shadows, faces distorted, voices masked, all except one. Veronica Caldwell, her aunt. Her eyes reptilian, expression severe. A woman built from ice and legacy. The recording clicked in like a ritual. Congratulations, Subject 47. You've passed the boundary threshold. We wondered, truly, if regression therapy would fragment you or fortify you. It seems Rose was more durable than the metrics predicted. Then another voice, male, calm, robotic. To reclaim your life, Subject, you must return to the chamber where identity converged, where the rewrite began. The vault awaits. Then Celia, no longer the puppet of the council, broke through in her real voice hidden inside a second layer of data. Margot, if you're hearing this, it means I failed you. Twice. First by hiding you, then by never telling you the whole truth. There's no undoing what they did, but there is one way to destroy them. Don't run. Finish what they started. The light flicked out. The hallway was empty, but Margot stood not with confusion anymore, but clarity. No riddles, no metaphors, just a choice. She turned back. Inside, Lena was packing with silent efficiency, her notebook in her coat pocket. Julian already had the maps, the files, the weapons. The next move wasn't a mystery. She opened her laptop, pulled up the encrypted folder Rain had left marked Convergence. One result. Coordinates. No explanation. Just a name. The Convergence Fault. Augustine, Maine, a sealed Cold War site listed as decommissioned. Julian hovered behind her. That's where you were reconstructed, isn't it? Margot's voice was a murmur. No, it's where I was dismantled. And if those logs are real, they restarted the project. They have new subjects, new generations. They're repeating it all. Lena, Rain, dozens of others, maybe never told what they truly were. Then we go. 2 days later, they arrived at dusk. The site was buried in frozen woods. No markers, no trail. Only trees that bent unnaturally away from a clearing, as if fearing what slept underneath. At the foot of a collapsed oak, they found the hatch. Steel bolts, rusted edges, old warning signs. Julian hesitated. Whoever called you here, Veronica, whoever holds the council now, they're expecting you. Margot's voice cut cold. She wants the rebirth. Her perfect Subject 47. No emotion, full control. They descended. The staircase spiraled like a helix of graves. Below was ruin, bloodstains like shadows, lights hissing of old voltage lost in time. And in the core chamber it waited. A vertical tank, liquid black and humming. An ancient monitor flared to life. Welcome back, Subject 47. Core memory, online. Awaiting final convergence. Margot froze, her breath gone. Julian stepped forward, his voice low. They want Rose and Margot to merge, the emotion and the programming bound together, the perfect soldier. Margot laughed bitterly. They failed the first time, so now they want to script the ending. Because you were the glitch, Julian said. You felt, you remembered. Then from behind, a scream, human, raw, Lena. They turned. Veronica Caldwell stood in the archway, flanked by two masked figures in gray tactical gear, perfectly still, perfectly silent. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. It's over, Margot, she said quietly. You belong to the legacy. You are its perfection, its rebirth. Come willingly, and we'll complete integration. Margot didn't move. And if I say no? Veronica's smirk lacked warmth or surprise. Then we erase you. Again. Like we did before. Margot stood straighter. You always feared Rose waking up. Veronica's eyes narrowed. It was me. I was the child screaming in the basement. Not Rose. Me. And I've been awake longer than you ever understood. She turned to Lena. Give me the notebook. Without hesitation, she did. She flipped through until she found it, the counter sigil, Rain's last gift. A code not for suppression, but release. She read it aloud, numbers, a rhythm, a broken chant. Words passed between stolen children like a torch. Suddenly, the lights jerked and flared. The guards collapsed. Veronica stumbled. Julian clutched his head, reeling in pain. Margot stood calm, eyes burning. Not destroyed, not fractured, whole. I am both, Rose and Margot. The tank exploded behind her. The black liquid burst out like blood remembering. Veronica screamed, not in pain, in fear. You're undoing everything. Exactly, Margot breathed. 2 weeks later, the Augustine site burned. News reported 3 dead, dozens wounded, but no bodies were recovered. The council, gone. Some said vanished, some said something worse. 6 months passed. The Caldwell estate was sold. The money, anonymously funneled into women's shelters, trauma reform labs, survivor foundations. The bloodline washed itself away. And then, a video appeared. A woman stood before the world, her eyes shimmering with fire, memory, and mirrors. No mask,